right, everybody, welcome, welcome, welcome. For some of you who are holding, that was the choice, the song choice. I always like to start one with the guest, and that was "Once in a Lifetime" from the band Talking Heads, of course. I'm sure most of you know that. And our guest today, CEO Jon Skogmo, who has a great topic. We'll get into that soon. He's going to explain why he chose that one. There he is.
Hey, how's it going?
Good to see you. Good to see you.
Likewise.
Good to see you. So today I have as my guest Jon Skogmo, CEO and founder of Jukin Media. And as I already mentioned today, Jon is one of my favorite entrepreneurs. Great guy. I've known Jon now for probably 7 years, Jon. It's crazy. From the very beginnings of my last gig before that, when I was looking at like I was trying to investigate who hot media tech companies were. Somehow we got connected and loved your story, loved what you guys were doing, and a true entrepreneur. And I'll lay that out a little bit more, but the name of the topic is literal in your case, which is from living room to boardroom. And it's the confessions of a real media tech entrepreneur. And you've lived it. You've done all that and you continue to live it. So you'll have you'll have great stories and anecdotes. And also, before we dig in, I just want everybody to know who's listening to this. Although it's about building a media tech company, founding and running one, so it's an entrepreneur story, the context for everybody is that no matter what part of the business that you're in, whether you're in the video business, music business, whatever it may be, immersive, esport, whatever it may be, you may be a creator, you may be a musician, you may be executive at a major company, or you may be starting your own company. No matter what, you need to know about an entrepreneur's path, because everybody has to be an entrepreneur in this day and age where tech is fast transforming our worlds, including the media and entertainment business, on an almost daily basis. So it's universal themes. As I always told you, I want to bring diverse voices and diverse roles to you at Creative University. And so that's why, again, I wanted Jon to join. So Jon, I'm going to first ask you, before I make the introduction, I always ask my guests to choose a song. You chose the song "Once in a Lifetime" by Talking Heads. And why is that?
It's interesting because I think the song has a lot of meanings for living in this day and age right now. At least how it resonates to me on a few different levels. First, David Brin is HBO just showed his live performance, American Utopia. So I think that just premiered, as a stage performance of him on stage on Broadway. I think maybe it was out a year ago. I didn't get to see it live, but I just saw it on HBO, and man, my mind was blown, and just really made me realize how much I miss, live performances, missing the theater, missing Broadway, missing music performances. And so I was just kind of blown away. So I highly recommend that. So it's been on top of mind that way, but also because I think it's relevant to this conversation. Obviously, we're living in crazy times now in 2020. I think the song is about being on autopilot, kind of walk around half awake, just going through the motions in life. And, the chorus is, how did I get here? How did I get here? And I think in life right now, we're the first time we're actually taking pause and we're reflecting on our life right now in 2020, being in a pandemic, given what's going on right now in the culture, going on in society, just kind of questioning everything. How did we get here in this kind of world? And I also think as an entrepreneur, it's really important to enjoy that journey and not just the destination. Don't just wake up one day and like, how I'm here. I think the destination is really the journey at the end of the day. And I think it's really easy to get heads down, focusing or just hustling and working, being on a treadmill or a hamster wheel and not knowing where you're going, right? It's just, you're just going through the motions of doing so. So I really think that song kind of has a lot of meanings to this conversation.
Amen to that. I love that. So as you can see, I love the passion of Jon, and that's just one of the things he brings to the table. That's why he's an entrepreneur. So here's a little bit more about him before we dig in. Many of you probably know about Jukin Media and some of the great brands they have, Fail Army and all of that. There's so many more. But Jukin is a digital first media company powered by user generated content. And UGC content is not easy to monetize, but Jon's company has been one of the few, very few, that's been able to do that and build a very successful business. And he'll tell you how. Under his leadership, the company grew from his living room to more than 175 employees with offices in LA, New York, London, and New Delhi. Among too many accolades, he has too many. Jon's been named to the Hollywood Reporter's Next Gen Under 35 list. I wish I were that young. And was a finalist in the 2019 Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year program for the LA region. He's a member of the Producers Guild of America, co-chair of its online video committee, and has produced more than 200 hours of linear TV programming for major networks, including MTV, Discovery, True TV, UK's Channel 5, and Fox. He earned his television degree at Columbia University, great school. And with that, Jon, I want to just dig in immediately, just really quickly, and then we'll get into the meat of just how you started your journey. Tell us just a little bit more about Jukin Media.
Yeah, so you kind of said it. In fact, I think that was a great summary. We believe we're a next generation media company, except everything we do is powered by user generated content. A lot of content shot on these mobile devices that we go around. People are creating really great stories. They're authentic, they're organic. You can't remanufacture some of these really great moments that people are capturing. We find a lot of value in these stories, a lot of value in these videos everyday people are creating. And so we built some really great technology, apply that with methodology to help find these really great stories that we can actually acquire the rights to, but then the end user can share in that revenue and participation. And so from that content powers the media company that we built today.
And by the way, that's a really interesting part of the business. The fact that even though it's user generated content, you've been able to acquire that content. So you own a library. They own the library of intellectual property. So, and Abby, I see questions coming in. By the way, send your questions in via chat or via the Q&A below, and I'll get to those later on. So I will get to those. But that's an interesting part of the business that I've always found to be very attractive. That you're able to make money off of user generated content.
That's the whole business, and we've actually paid over $25 million to video owners for these undervalued assets that we find a lot of value in. And everything we do, that's our IP. And then how do we create derivative IP? As you mentioned, Fail Army, Pet Collective, or other brands. People are awesome.
No, that's awesome. That's interesting. So let's talk about from living room to boardroom. You graduated from Columbia University. Then how did you start this company?
Yeah, so I grew up in Chicago. It's actually Columbia College in Chicago, which is
Columbia College in Chicago, but a film and television.
They have it. It's like the biggest one in the Midwest, but everyone confuses it. Sometimes I correct them, but since you said it the second time, that I correct you. But university is a great school. I wasn't that good of a student to get in. But this was also actually a very great liberal arts college. I started off, I'm working on some movies, some big movies that came to Chicago in the casting department. But, it was 15 years ago when I graduated college. I moved out to LA. I always wanted to be in media entertainment after doing some stuff in Chicago.
Did you know Jon, when you moved out to LA, did you know anybody or did you just have the dream and so you went for it?
Not really. Yeah, I really didn't know anyone. You when you're coming out to a new place, particularly Hollywood, you're reaching out to everyone in your network, and somebody who may have an assistant here or somebody here, and you're trying your best to pieces together, and it's certainly hard. But it was again, it was a really great journey coming here. Not knowing very many folks, very few. Didn't have any friends. Like I had a family friend of a family friend out here, what it was. But one of my first jobs being out here after working movies, going to film school, come out here. And one of my first jobs was working at the small production company in Hollywood where I was a researcher on a clip show, a new clip show that was coming out on CMT, which is a cable channel. You think of like America's Funniest Home Videos. This was a derivative version of that. My job was actually go to the P.O. box every day and pick up these VHS tapes and DVDs that people would send in, because at the end of every show, we'd send in your video to this P.O. box. And I was the kid who used to go to the P.O. box every day. And I would come back from the P.O. box. I had this big box, all these tapes, and a VHS player. Some of the kids probably watching don't know what a VHS player is, but VHS is about this big, and I would watch it. And if it was any good, I had to pick up the envelope, try to read the handwriting, call the person up, and I said, "Hey, we want to use your video for the show. Can we license it? Can you send us more footage? Can you sign more paperwork? Yada, yada, yada." By the time I would clear a piece of content, it would be like 2 weeks through the whole process. I was working on a lot of videos at once, but a lot of the content that was coming in was really bad. Only 10% was any good. And I told my producers, there's got to be an easier way than this to find content. There's just we got to source it a different way than just relying people to send it in. And their idea was to put ads in newspapers and county fairs. And I said, that's not what I'm talking about. And obviously today online video is so powerful. You can see, look what we're communicating this way, digitally, which couldn't be done even not too long ago. But online video didn't really exist. Platforms out there didn't really, there wasn't any really major video platforms. If there was, it was kind of shady content. It wasn't family-friendly content. You couldn't source the owner. It was some like jackass wannabes, early video days 1.0, where guys would light their crotch on fire, hair on fire, that sort of stuff. So you couldn't put that on TV. But to make a long story short, me being the person I am, as I was going to the P.O. box, in between, I found this website that no one ever heard of before, where I thought it was really great content. I actually felt like I could source the owner and send them a direct message and say, hey, we want to use your video. Can you send us the video file? And I saw this platform that nobody was using. That was very early days. And I told my supervising producers, I'm like, hey, we should sign up for that website and start direct messaging people. And they said, oh, you can't trust it. Shut up, kid. Go to the P.O. box. You don't know what you're talking about. Me, again, being the person I am, I decided to do it anyway and started bringing in content that way. Instead of waiting for the mail to come in, I would get the video in my inbox, and just reaching out to people, direct messaging. Before you know it, by the end of this pilot and then the first season, I got a lot more content than my supervising producers did. And the owners of the small production company in Hollywood said, hey, kid, how did you do that? These guys have been working TV for the last 20 years and all this research and journalistic experience. And I said, well, I set up this website. And do you know the name of that website? It's called YouTube.
Oh, there you go. There you go.
It's 2005.
It's a nice little website that, I haven't heard about before.
Exactly. So I got, being very lucky and, a little hard work, signed up for this website and just was really an early adopter, and really from the early days, try to figure it out. I was in the right time, understanding the platform and then how to reach out to folks and find really great content and source the content, because we had to source the content to put on TV. And so next thing you know it, clip shows became more popular. Online video became more popular. YouTube started blowing up. Mobile phones, smartphones came out. The way you capture content, the way you create content, the way we share content, the proliferation of all these mobile devices, this went through the roof. The same time, the writer's strike happened, and clip shows even became more popular because of that. Now you have all the scripted shows in the world, but they went away. So reality and script and clip shows became popular. And I became the guy in town who knew how to produce or staff up these and find these really great videos. So I was really jumping around from show to show, production company, network. So I did shows for, like I said, CMT, MTV, Discovery, True TV. So I started producing these type of clip shows for about 5 years. When I realized, I thought there was a huge opportunity.
So John, that was between like 2006 to 11, something like that?
Yeah, it was like 2000. It was 2006 to 2010-ish. Yeah.
I don't think you need any more caffeine, by the way.
Well, that's why I got water too.
By the way, I'm the same way. So
what, it just tastes so good. Uh, you know. Um, where was I at?
No, so you realized after 5 years, essentially.
Yeah, so I realized that no one was curating this content. So there were like sites like Getty Images. Today we say we're the UGC or viral video, Getty Images of viral videos. But there were sites like that. They were kind of stock footage, but nobody was doing that for user generated content. People kind of discounted these videos. At the same time, um, these first YouTubers, I was putting them on TV. And other people started catching on, other TV shows, whether news show, talk show. They wanted to use their content, and folks didn't know, these early content creators, how to negotiate those licensing agreements. And just because I was the first one I put on TV, they asked me, "Hey, how do you do this? What should I ask for? What kind of money? What should I be careful of?" And I started redlining their license agreements and doing that for free.
And by the way, just to be clear, there were no rules of the game.
Right.
When they said, how much should we charge for it? How much should we pay for it? And all that kind of thing. Nobody had any idea. It's like in anything for everybody out there, it kind of gets back to what Ann Lee, one of my guests before, who is CEO of Sean Penn's relief organization, CORE, but she was saying that everybody's faking it. Everybody's faking it. Nobody knows what the right answer is. You just kind of make it up.
Well, you use what historical knowledge, what's been there in the past and try to apply it to the future, right? And so I was negotiating these kind of license agreements from digital. It was a standard IP license, but no one was actually doing it from a digital medium to a traditional medium, at least at the scale I was. And so I was putting these YouTubers on TV for the first time. And between that, knowing that there's a lot of demand for this type of content, knowing I'm probably the best person in the world to do this, I said, you know what, I'm going to quit my job for Discovery. I was working for a company in Hollywood, producing a show for Discovery. After they sent me to a trip called to MIPCOM, if you're familiar with that. Those who don't know, it's the biggest kind of television conference in the world, distribution conference where they buy and sell the rights in different formats. And I go there and realize, for any media company, we talked about IP, what is, the lifeblood, and it is that IP. And so Disney has its Marvel and Star Wars and Mickey Mouse. Jukin has these really great cat videos and people doing this, and realize that's going to be our lifeblood, the IP, these individual videos. And so,
and by the way, for everybody out there, really, that's something it's definitely worth underscoring yet again, that ownership of intellectual property, which means ownership of the content, whether that's in the video world or music world with publishing and master rights, all that, has always been content is king. You've always heard that. It's never become more king than it is today, and continues to be, because you can take that content that you own and you can license it out, giving it life in all these new kinds of ways to reach people, and so they can enjoy it. And of course, then you can monetize it. But anyhow, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it was really the light switch that went off when I was producing these shows. I was a freelance producer. So I called sick on one day. I didn't get paid. They paid me my day rate. That was it. I had no participation in the IP of the shows I was producing. It was owned by the production company or network. And it was when I went to MIP, I realized you gotta own that IP. And how do you own IP? You gotta, create it yourself, create up the characters or whatever it is, the story, which is very hard to do, because it's just hard to do to come up with a big hit. Or you have to put up the financing for someone else to create the stuff. That's how you own it. But I realized the best assets I have are these individual videos, because I went there and saw these shows I helped produce being sold overseas in the international markets. I produce all those stories from all these individual videos, these clip shows.
Yeah.
And so I said, well, I can't own maybe a whole show or a whole format. I can own those individual pieces. And so I literally came back and quit my job and started Jukin from my apartment.
It started from your apartment. And that's why, again, the title of this is very literal. You started from your apartment. When you did that, how scared were you? And how much of a roadmap did you have to how to build a company?
It's interesting. So I had very little startup costs, right? I hired a lawyer to do some license agreements. And, with a laptop, that's all I really needed. And I think, it was as scrappy as an organization as you can get. I think I hired, some assistants at like, $10 or less an hour, whatever the minimum wage was. Um, it was, I think on my last day of my job, I stole a whole bunch of office supplies, which I don't recommend, but you do what you got to do. Uh, I took it out the door. I'm like, okay, I'm starting my own thing. And we had people on folding tables and chairs, within a few months in my living room. I was cooking them breakfast and lunch. And it was like a great little small family. As to your point earlier, there was no roadmap. We were just trying to figure this stuff out.
That's okay. You can say it. By the way, so John, how did you attract? It was out of your apartment at that point in time with folding chairs. How were you able to attract the first employees that you brought in?
So it was because I had a lot of relationships on these clip shows I helped produce. So I knew the market of how much value. I knew how much I can get them fairly, inexpensive or at a rev share, and knew I could what the budgets were for these shows, so I can mark it up because I had that inside knowledge. I had that industry knowledge. I don't think that many people even today can say they evolved. The whole career has evolved around UGC. Mine certainly has, and I was the expert at that time. And so I just hired people that I worked on these shows with, these researchers and assistants. So I had this really great network of people and people that were feeding me content all day long because I understood that industry. And to answer your other question, which I want to get to, was I scared starting it? Absolutely not. I was like gung ho, this is what I'm doing. That being said, I said I'm only going to do this for about 6 months because I think it was June where I quit my job. And I said, you know what, I'm going to do this for the summer to see how it lasts. And then I think the summer came to September after Labor Day. That's when I probably hired my first employee. So let's do it to the rest of the year, December. And then, January came and I said, do I want to go find work again? I was like, nah, I was like, I'm just going to keep going and see how long it lasts. That's when I said it's going to turn the company, but I wasn't scared because I was working so hard. My blood, sweat, and tears was going into somebody else's IP that I didn't own and control. And when you're in the production business, it's a lot of hard work. And I wanted to control my own destiny. And so I was so excited to just at least try it and see if it could could I support myself for a few months. Not even thinking about a business plan or anything like that. Just support myself for a few months. And then it was about 6 months in, I said, okay, maybe now it's a business. And that's when I incorporated and really started, going through that process.
But okay, so you were fearless about doing that. Love that. But you didn't, it's not like you had somebody it's not like you have a paint by numbers approach where this is how you build a company, A, B, C, D, E. You just went in and you just took steps and just did it, right? You just kind of did it.
Yeah, just learned trial by error, just learned and just started doing it.
Which is an important lesson that we hear over and over and over again. So like for everybody out there who's watching this, it's not that you have to have it all figured out. I don't think John knew he was going to get into the UGC content space when he was at school. Ultimately, he found a gig and really worked hard at it, and saw a light bulb had the light bulb moment when other people didn't. So he ran with it because he has that entrepreneurial kind of gut. And what I found is that in the course of my career, there's like a spectrum. Some people are 100% just purely entrepreneurial, fearless. And then you have some who are they're just more conservative in the way that they need to have something more steady and predictable and things like that. There's nothing wrong with any one, but then there's a whole spectrum in between. John is the true entrepreneur who's at the one end. And like, that's why coming out of doing it from his living room, and it's interesting. One other thing that is a recurring theme in all of these discussions is the power of relationships. And so for you young people out there, as you're thinking about how do I break into this business? How do I get in? Well, first of all, you've already crossed over into Creative University. And so you get great minds of like John, and he has internships available, other companies do. So you already have a leg up. But if you, and you may think that a certain opportunity might be too small or not pay enough or not exactly what you want to do. But this is what I would tell you, and I've said it before. It's the power of relationships. Get in, get your feet wet, get a taste of it, because every experience is going to be enlightening in terms of guiding you to what you like or don't like. And if you impress somebody like a Jon, then, by getting in at the beginning, then you become a central founding person of now a 175 person company, which is one of the hottest young media tech companies out there. So that's how it works.
And we're probably closer to 220 now. Since
Even better.
Last update. Yeah, but I agree with you about network, especially if you want to be media entertainment. Like, I didn't know anyone, like no one when I first moved out here. But I'll tell you, once I started establishing myself, when I started producing from all these different shows, I didn't apply for one job cold. I got the job because it was a reference, and I never applied. I just, like, someone said, "Oh, you got to hire Jon." So you got to hire Jon. I just kind of really built my network. And I think you have to do it in a really authentic way of how you build that network. LA, we know, so phony, a lot of fakes. What can you do for me? I just be yourself. That's networking, just being yourself, applying your good values, working hard, and the network will come.
Now, I couldn't agree more. And I've said it a lot of times too, which is, yes, you may have on occasion, there are some stories where you have an executive recruiter or a headhunter or somebody gets you in. But Jon, I'm sure you see it, that you get stacks of resumes coming in, stacks of applications.
1,000 a week.
And there's going to be great people, like great, extremely talented people, passionate people. But that's hard. It's hard to rise to the top in any organization, get to the top of that stack. And if you have a relationship, somebody who goes to bat for you, that's going to be a much more likely way that you get an opportunity than by a headhunter or an executive recruiter. So that's where your time should be significantly spent, in my view. And we've heard that over and over again with the people who are guests in Creative University. But
I agree.
So that's how you started. And then how did you start building that? And how long did it take to build and get out of your apartment and really start, spending money to get into an office and build a team and scale it up? And when did you start raising capital to do that?
Yeah. So the business, how it started, isn't exactly what the business is today. And I think for any entrepreneur or in the tech world, that's usually the case. It changes over time. You pivot and you iterate and you find out what works and what doesn't work and what scales and what doesn't scale. So I think, for the first year was really about, I don't want to go back to work for somebody else. Like, if I'm going to do it, if I'm going to, live here, I'm just going to do it on my own terms. And so it wasn't until probably about a year in where I got a small office in Hollywood. It's called the Hollywood Production Center. And I think it was kind of like a WeWork, I would say, but more geared for production, because production, you really expand and subtract based on what kind of shows and movies you're working on. So you start off small, and then you have, all of a sudden, you'll staff up once you have the project. We get more offices. So, it was like taking a first step. I'm like, well, I don't know how long this is going to last. So I'm just going to, the advantage of someone like me and doing a startup like WeWork is I can do that month to month.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I'm gonna do this small little office. I had two offices next to each other. I had me and somebody else, and we had 4 people in the room across the hall, which is going month to month.
Were you already making enough money so you're profitable to be able to do that, or was it coming out of your pocket?
We were profitable from day one. So I put in probably initial investment in the company, maybe $5,000, if maybe a little bit more, $5,000 to $10,000 the initial investment for a lawyer, incorporating all that stuff. After that, the first video that we licensed, it turned a profit, and so we were profitable from day one, and we just reinvested that capital right back into the business.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So we were able to double from year to year, which was great.
What did?
We doubled our revenue from year to year in those early days. Yeah.
And that was what year? 2011, 12?
So when we first got the office, it was probably 2010.
Okay.
End of 2010 it was. It was the
Okay.
fall of 2010. Then 2011, um, we started expanding a little bit more in this office. I think we took up more room. And we ended up staying in this Hollywood production center at one point. I remember looking, it was a really interesting time. The other folks that were there, um, and this is a good lesson too. There's a company that you're familiar with. I don't think they're around anymore. Machinima
Oh,
was in the space. They
yeah.
just happened to be in this Hollywood production center. And they were, I remember when we had the two offices, they had almost the whole second floor. I didn't know how to pronounce their name. I didn't know who the hell they were. Machinima, and these guys were walking around playing games, and like they had like army suits on and like other type of like crazy gear, but they were like the hottest company in like 2010, 2011.
Yeah, they were.
Yeah, I think Google put a lot of money in them, um, and they were like one of the first MCNs that were focused on gaming.
By the way, MCNs, for those of you out there, because you probably don't even know that term, because it kind of came and went, but it was around for a long time, for many years. That's multi-channel networks, and they were aggregators of YouTube channels that they'd put on under like a brand or a kind of a state of mind. That's what multi-channel networks were, where they wouldn't. There was original development, yes, but it was predominantly just tying together creators of a certain kind and that.
Yeah, and it was interesting because I had no idea who they were. I knew my business, and also how we pivoted. We were getting these really great video assets, helping these creators that were, making sure that we were protecting their rights on behalf of the creators. Then we were licensing back to TV. So we were like more like an agency, in a way, but we did retain the IP.
Yeah.
But we're just an agency and just licensing it back to these TV shows, these TV shows that I worked on. And had relationships in that network. But I realized I have like 1,000 videos, I think, in our library. Some of them were like really great viral videos at the time. And I saw this machinima that was making tons of money on YouTube. We weren't making any money on YouTube. I didn't even know how to make money on YouTube, through their monetization platform, which was fairly new at the time that they launched. And so I go to somebody at Machinima who's running biz dev. And I said, hey, I see you guys are doing really well on YouTube. Can you explain to me how this works? Because this is what I have. I have this really great library of IP that I'm putting on TV. And should I have like a destination? I was thinking about maybe launching a website with this, trying to find different ways to monetize the content other than just licensing. And I thought YouTube was a perfect way. Should I own channels? Should I create channels, own channels, own the, today we have the fail armies. Should I own that? I was debating if we should do that. So I told that BD person my business and thinking about my future plans. And he told me, no, who cares about owning IP? You don't need to own IP because we have 50,000 YouTube channels in our network. We don't own any IP. We don't care about that. Let the other people own the IP. It's all, let the gamers and the game company. So I said, don't own the IP, no need to own the library, no need to create channels yourself or destination websites. They said, everything's on YouTube. And, in full disclosure, Alan Devois, who, founded the company, he's also an investor in Jukin years later.
Yeah.
But I did tell him that story, and I think he got a kick out of it later.
Yeah. But that was a time when everybody, the industry really felt that advertising revenues alone would drive scale and real successful companies. And like Jon said, not understanding that it's ultimately about advertising alone does not a successful media tech company make. In fact, it didn't. And that soon came that. So you had some companies become very large, tons of money invested in them. And then ultimately they failed because there just was no business model that worked.
No diversification and revenue. It was all YouTube, all ad revenue. Exactly. Yeah. Okay. And so that's the ironic for the folks who don't know. So
yeah. So I don't want to cut that story out, but I want to just and then we got to get to some questions. But when did you decide to first raise money to scale your business, and how did you go about that? And how did you because you hadn't done that before. Yeah. So how did that all happen?
So I'll bridge the gap. So it was when we started we told him, I'll quickly end there. We told him, the Machinima guy said, you guys don't, there's no business here. Don't do anything, like we can't work with you. And I thought, well, this guy knows his stuff. They're killing it on YouTube. Maybe he's right. I don't know. But I did actually in the back of my mind thought that he was wrong. There's something about it. I think it is important to own IP. That's why I built the business. And I think it's important to start owning audience and building and having that relationship, one-on-one relationship with the audience, and build these kind of consumer-facing channels. So we curate the channels on one side, and then I thought it was a good idea to create these kind of owned and operated YouTube channels, these brands. And I thought that was very important. And so we started building out our kind of digital publishing programming strategy, which was extremely hard. We had like 5 channels we launched with. And I remember for the first maybe, year, we couldn't, make any money on it. I think the most we were making like $2,000 a month. And we thought that was a huge hurdle once we made it $2,000, we couldn't make anything else. But it really wasn't until, we had the #2 video in the entire world this one summer. If you remember Gundam Style,
of course.
Gundam Style, Sai, I think his name is.
Yeah.
That was the #1 video. We had the #2 video in that summer, which is a Fail Army compilation. And our revenue for YouTube.
Wait, so Gangnam Style, you owned that one?
We didn't own that. That was the #1 video. We had the #2.
Okay.
So that summer when that video came out, he was #1, and then we were #2 video in the entire world, which is a Fail Army video. And so our own and operated property started taking off. And then I realized there was a lot of capital being poured into these MCNs. I realized that we were different. We were a differentiator from the MCNs, that we own the IP. We don't roll up channels. We just roll up IP. We roll up the content, and we own or operate channels, where the full screen makers, their belief was just rolling up as many and aggregating as many views and as many creators as they can. And they were more like an agency than us. So
okay. So on that point, I think it's worth underscoring again to everybody who's out there that what Jon was saying, he was looking at these companies that were defined as being successful at the time. And, when you see that and you see massive amounts of money being poured into these companies, and they're the ones who grab the storyline, they're going to be seen as the ones who have it all figured out. So Jon, as an entrepreneur, had an inkling that, well, he respects that, but there was something that didn't feel right about it. And so he bucked the trend, did something that, well, Jon doesn't get scared about anything, but he did something that would be scary to most, which is went the other way. And one thing for everybody to understand is that if you follow the conventional, what everybody else is doing, then it's going to be much harder to break out, first of all, and be successful. But secondly, if you do that, there will never be innovation anyhow. It sounds obvious, but anytime that you go another way, you're going to have naysayers that question that.
Yep. And I had a lot of naysayers. I had a lot of people that said, no, you should roll up channels. You should roll up, everybody in the space was doing it. They were going this way. I said, I'm going to go this way. I'm going to stick to my gut. I'm going to stick to my instinct. I think, this is the right way to grow an actual business. And so a lot of capital was being poured into the space.
And they wanted to pour capital into you with that aggregation model. Exactly. And you resisted that.
I did. We did. We didn't think it made a lot of sense to raise money for the purpose of scale. We weren't a tech company, really. We started hiring engineers to help us, for process and optimization in our workflow, help us find these videos. But we didn't feel like to raising the money was necessarily the right path for us. So we end up raising a ton of money. So we did end up raising in 2014, I think it was $1 million for some very strategic people at the time who could add value. And we made a conscious decision not to spend that money.
Which is, by the way, very, very rare, because at the time, 2014, it was a very hot time for MCNs. That's when there were tens and tens and tens of millions of hundreds of millions of dollars being poured into this space. And Jon took $1 million, and they were profitable all the time. And one thing, and then I got to move on to just a couple other things, because we don't have much time. I want to get to your questions too. I have some questions from beforehand, but at the time, when Jon did that, remember, for all of you entrepreneurs out there, the more capital you take, the more control other people have on your business. And also the more capital you take from them, the less you own of the business. So you lose control, you start giving it away. And instead of owning, let's say 100% of the company, you start getting it down and you get what they call diluted down. So every time you raise capital, then more and more people own a piece of you and of the company. And so that's the whole game that's played in the investment side, of retaining as much control as you can, and at the same time retaining as much ownership, not only for yourself, but for your employees and any other strategic people that you want. So anyhow, that's a little bit on the venture capital side.
And I think that was part of our strategy, was maintain as much ownership in the building as we can, control our own destiny. We ended up raising from the same people, but it was convertible notes is what we did. We only raised $6 million compared to some of the other companies that raised 50, 60, $70 million.
Yeah.
Spent all of it. Fast forward today, we haven't taken dollars since maybe 2015.
That's insane. And
I've never touched it. Still sits on the balance sheet.
Which is amazing. Think about that. That rarely happens. Actually being conservative with your money spend, because I'll give you a cautionary tale for everybody out there. I've talked about them before. Quibi. So one of the biggest tech titans in the world, Meg Whitman, joined with one of the big media titans in the world, Jeff Katzenberg. They raised $1.6 billion to launch Quibi and to build this company that was going to transform the media and entertainment world. $1.6 billion. Less than 6 months after they launched, 6 months, the company is now closed. They shut down. It didn't work. And part of the problem, anytime you raise a lot of capital, it's too easy to spend money. The more controlled you are with your money, you make better choices because you're more focused. Okay, so enough about my.
And listen, there's some people that raise a ton of money that do extremely well.
Yes, but it's like writing a paper. If you have 1,000 words, or 500 words, you can take the same story, you got to cut it back down, so every word matters. It's the same kind of thing. It's like
every dollar we spend, we're paying close attention to. It doesn't burn a whole pocket like we have to spend it. And we've taken a very much an MVP approach, minimum viable product, to everything that we do. We invest behind things, we don't invest in front of things. I think that's where the problem, where folks get in a lot of trouble.
Okay, so I'm going to get into a little Q&A. I'm going to ask Anam's question, or answer her question first. Peter, why is Jon one of your favorite entrepreneurs? Well, I'll give a specific reason and why I wanted Jon right before Election Day. One of the reasons is because, and this is just one small example, he's giving all of his employees the day off on Tuesday, Election Day, so that they will go out and vote. That says something about who Jon is. So it's just one small little anecdote about why I like Jon, but it goes deeper than that. I think you can tell just by, I love Jon's energy and passion and the fact that he's fearless. You know, that's why I called my podcast Fearless Media. Those who are not afraid, well, listen, you can be afraid. You can be afraid, but fearless doesn't mean that you have no fear. It means that you're willing to take action. You're willing to take action and go do it. Now, Jon is the extreme entrepreneur on one end of the spectrum. And I've always just respected that. I've respected the fact that, you know, I like the underdog. You know, I had no contacts or relationships when I grew up and I, you know, wanted to get in the media and entertainment business. I love every part of his story. The fact that he, you know, is out of Chicago, came out because he had a passion, didn't have relationships, made it happen, you know, on and on and on, made it up as he went. It wasn't given to him. And he built a company that I really respect. It's a company that I really believe in, always have from day one. I like what they do. I like the way he thinks, this ownership model, and being able to use all these videos and delight us in all these different kinds of ways, delight advertisers. So there's a whole host of reasons. And then I want to answer a couple other questions, but since we're talking about politics, the elections, I think it's important for people to understand that Jukin Media was in the center of international news about 2 months ago with the Trump campaign. So can you just tell that story?
Yeah. So a little backstory there is that we talked a little bit, or I mentioned what a few times, that we get these videos from the original rights holder. We get that IP, we share in that participation, so these guys can monetize them. These are not your everyday content creator influencers. These are everyday people who happen to find this really great authentic video and capture it. And so we're representing their video on a perpetual level going forward. And that means we're handling all the licensing negotiations. That means we're handling all the IP protection around that content. And so we have a small team that are helping us find what we call infringers, people that are using this content that are profiting off it, or who have the means to pay for it. And sometimes we get a bad rap because we're doing that, but we have to protect our IP. It's our obligation to the video owner. It's our obligation. If you own IP, you have to actually police it or you lose it. So what happens from time to time is people take our videos and they use it for whatever purpose they want. And in this case, which we never thought would happen, the president of the United States used this video from our video owner. And he doctored it and used it and infringed on that content. We never thought that would happen on that high level, regardless of your political affiliation is. The video owner asked us to take action, and we were happy to do that on behalf of the video owner.
And remember, this was the video that you all will probably recall of. It was two young kids who, you describe it. I don't want to not describe correctly.
Yeah, it was an African-American kid. It was a white kid, and they're best friends. And it's a really, really heartfelt video. And they're running at each other on the street, and they give each other a big hug. It's really heartwarming. And the office decided to manipulate that video and use it for their own purpose and their own agenda. Our legal, after talking with the video owner, we confirmed it with our legal. We felt like they were infringing on our rights, and so we had to take action. And so we worked with Twitter to remove that video.
And that was a massive story. You probably all remember it. I'm going to ask more questions from Abby. Has a couple, but Anam, I want to add one more thing that I didn't say about Jon that I think is so important about why he's one of my favorite entrepreneurs. Authenticity, because he spoke to authenticity. He spoke to the fact that you got to just, you got to be you. You got to just go out there and, like, when you're out there building relationships, being authentic as you're doing it, and being like two-way about it, not just expecting, but giving back. Like Jon's giving back here. That's another thing. He's taking his time, and I knew he would say yes when I asked him to do it. Like, he's authentic. So those are some more reasons. I think authenticity is such a critical thing, and doing the hard work and all that. That's what it takes to be a successful entrepreneur. All of that. So Abby asks a question, and I'm going to get to a couple of questions that were sent in advance too. Can you talk, and we only have a couple of minutes, so we have to go kind of lightning round here, Jon. Can you talk about your operations in India and how their use of video is the same or different from the US market?
Yeah, so I think one thing of what's so good about these videos generally, they're universal. The content is language agnostic. A cute kid is a cute kid. A guy falling over is a guy falling over. It's funny in any language. The only really difference is obviously there's some cultural differences, and the licensing rates are much different. Even though they're a big market, it's still, as far as population wise, there's still a small market. And so the price per video for use is going to be a lot less than it is in the US. So that's one of the big differences. But the team there in New Delhi is a great, hardworking team. You go to their offices and it's just like another extension of Jukin, and we talk with them every day. They report into somebody in the US. It's like 35 people or something out there. It's a really great team.
Excellent. Okay, so I'm going to ask a question from a fellow Hungarian, Zabo Amy. So Amy Zabo asked the question: When you have a company to care about 24/7, how do you manage the stress? What have you learned in balancing your work life and personal life? How do you manage to take care of yourself when you have a company, clients, and employees to care about?
Great question. So when I talk about being fearless when I started, that absolutely is true. But you talk about me being afraid today. I'm terrified, to be honest with you. There's so much more at stake, and it's not just what me personally is at stake. It is my employees who I consider my family. They have families. They have children. They have friends. They have relationships, and having that responsibility of the 220 and plus the extended people that's in their life is a tremendous responsibility, and I take that responsibility extremely seriously. I want to be there for them, just like they've been there, have been there, and always be there for me. I'm in the trenches, my rolling up my sleeves in the ditches, getting down and dirty, helping on them out, whatever they can. My rule is I'll never ask you to do something that I haven't done 100 times or I'm not willing to do. Now, lead by example. And I think that kind of makes me at least sleep better at night, knowing, hey, I have this tremendous amount of stress, but knowing I'm literally, and I think the senior team too, I'll put in that bucket. We're doing everything we can for them people at the company, and we take that responsibility extremely seriously.
And just a quick follow-up on this. When you started the company, it was a certain way, and now you have a company of 220 people. Which is more fun?
Listen, I think there's like you have different problems, right, at different stages, and I think you have different levels of fun at different stages. I love. I still love getting out of the bed and doing this every single day. I'm heartbroken that I don't get to see my colleagues every day. That we're doing this through remote, but it's working well. But you see right here, I have a picture of my staff that reminds me of how wonderful people they are. Um,
That's awesome. That's awesome. So Julian asked the question, how did you learn about owning IP? You raised 6 million. How much percentage of the company did you have to sacrifice?
Well, I learned about the licensing and IP from my very first job of researching. So I learned about the licensing agreements and the requirements there. And then the only IP came from that conference at MIP, which was just kind of a light bulb where I said, instead of doing a non-exclusive license for these shows, I should do an exclusive license
Yeah.
and own it myself.
And do you want to talk about raising, like, well, I'm not going to put you in that position.
What was the question again?
It was, you raised $6 million. So what percentage of the company did you have to sacrifice for that? Those are things that I'll let you answer if you want to, but these are sensitive questions too.
Yeah, I would say a majority. I'll answer it this way: a majority of the company is owned by the employees. I think, again, another testament that I think I've been less, probably some folks that really, we couldn't afford their salaries really early on. People that were some senior folks, to recruit them to come over, we couldn't afford to pay their salaries, but I couldn't make it up for equity. And so I think we've been a little bit more generous than most companies on giving employees equity, but it feels like it's like they have skin in the game at the end of the day. And
yeah, that's pretty impressive, John. And for everybody out there, to be able to, at this stage, when you have 220 people to own, for the employees to own a majority of the company and have control, that's good for you.
Thank you.
Really quickly too, why Jukin Media? How'd you come up with that name?
Real quick, the last question is usually the opposite. Usually the outside capital owns most of the company.
Yeah, exactly.
Jukin Media is a term in Chicago. Me and my friends used to toss around. Is this party Jukin? Is this place happening? Is it lively? Is it Jukin? Yeah.
I love that too. Okay, last question, and then we'll end it because we're almost at the hour. Abby asks, for the paid internships, can John talk about what positions those are and what he is looking for in an intern or entry-level employee?
I'll say this: when I'm very proud, whether you're an intern and assistant that come in, I mean, we're always looking for from marketing to programming to office assistants to front desk to production. People, we like hiring young, hungry, green people. We have a philosophy that we want people to come in and punch above their weight class. People who just want to come and be here, and we are big components of promoting and hiring within. So we want to make sure to give people a career path. I have people that were interns that are now director level 4 years later. which
Yeah.
is so VPs, SVPs. Someone who was her first job in media entertainment. She was a hairstylist. She's now an SVP.
That's awesome.
8 years later.
SVP, Senior Vice President, for those of you out there. And I can attest to the fact that Jukin is just from an environment perspective, energetic. It's a cool company, guys, if you want to apply. It's a really cool company. I've been to the offices many times. Eventually, people will be able to get back into the offices. It's great space, great energy, young, vibrant, creative, innovative. And the internships now obviously can be virtual internships. So that's where it is. So Jon, listen, thank you so much for being part of this. I'm going to make this available on demand for video on demand at our YouTube channel and also in podcast form. But that's why I wanted Jon to join, because he has such great experience, direct experience. And thank you so much for being part of Creative University, Jon.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. I miss you, Peter.
I miss you too, buddy. We'll see each other.
Stay safe. And thank you, everyone, for the awesome questions. Really great questions. Thank you.
All right. See you, everybody. Thanks, Jon.